I always said a man could survive his wife's betrayal. But when I found out she had been cheating on me with my best friend, I decided they were going to lose a lot more than just me. If you'd asked me 6 months earlier what the strongest thing in my life was, I would have answered without thinking. Trust. Because love changes. Money comes and goes. Kids grow up and stop asking you to fix every broken toy in the house. But trust? Trust is what lets you hand another man the keys to your home and tell him, help yourself to anything in the fridge. Turns out, I should have been more specific about what anything meant. My name is Matthew. I'm 43 years old, married, father of one incredible son, co-owner of a construction company, and, at least back then, the proud owner of the biggest pair of invisible clown shoes in the state. Looking back now, I probably deserved my own circus tent. Brian and I met when we were 23. Two broke idiots with more confidence than common sense. We started our company with one rusty pickup truck, borrowed tools, and enough unpaid invoices to wallpaper a warehouse. Somehow, against all odds, it worked. 20 years later, we employed almost 50 people. We weren't rich enough to buy private islands, but we had nice houses, reliable trucks, college funds for our kids, and wives who loved to remind everyone that they had supported us from the beginning. Technically true. Jessica had been there since year 2. Ashley had married Brian a few years later. The four of us became inseparable. Vacations together, Christmas dinners together, summer barbecues almost every weekend, fishing trips every spring, football Sundays every fall. If someone looked through our family photo albums, they'd probably assume Brian was my brother. Sometimes I think he would have preferred that. He already had everything else that belonged to me. Brian was also my son's godfather. That wasn't a title I handed out lightly. When my son was born, I didn't hesitate for even a second. Brian, I told him, if anything ever happens to me, you're the man I trust most. He actually cried. Or maybe he had something in his eye. Hard to tell in hindsight. Funny how memories change once you know the ending. Jessica and Ashley became close friends too. The kind who texted every day, shared recipes they'd never actually cook, sent each other videos of ridiculously expensive kitchen gadgets nobody needed, complained about us. You know, normal wife stuff. At least that's what I thought. People always asked how Brian and I had managed to stay friends for so long. Simple. Neither of us kept score. If one guy paid for dinner, the other grabbed the next one. If somebody needed help moving furniture, the other showed up. If someone's roof leaked during a storm, both of us climbed up there with ladders. There wasn't a single moment in 20 years when I questioned him. Not once. If someone had walked up to me and said, "Matthew, Brian is going to betray you," I would have laughed, then probably asked if they'd been drinking before noon. I would have believed the sun would refuse to rise before I believed Brian would stab me in the back. That's how complete my trust was. Which, as it turns out, is a fantastic way to make betrayal hurt twice as much. Maybe 3 times. Life stayed normal for years. Until it didn't. The funny thing about disasters is that they almost never announce themselves. They don't arrive wearing a black cape and dramatic background music. No. They sneak in disguised as tiny inconveniences. Jessica's behavior changed slowly enough that I kept finding excuses for it. Jessica started spending more time on her phone. Nothing unusual. Everybody lives on their phone now. Half the population would probably forget their children before forgetting their chargers. She became colder. She started saying work had become stressful. More meetings, more late evenings, more, "I have to stay another hour." Again, perfectly reasonable. People get promoted. Responsibilities grow. That's adulthood. She simply stopped asking about my day, avoided physical contact, and spent more time staring at her phone than looking at me. The phone was always face down. If I entered the room, the screen went dark. If I asked who she was texting, the answer was always the same. Work. Apparently work had become very romantic because it regularly made her smile at midnight. Jessica worked in office administration, but judging by her schedule, You would have thought she was personally negotiating world peace. I noticed. I just didn't suspect an affair. My mother had been ill for several months, and I was helping her with appointments, medication, groceries, and repairs around her house. Jessica always encouraged me to stay as long as necessary. "Don't worry about us," she would say. "Your mom needs you." At the time, I thought she was being supportive. Later, I realized she was mostly being helpful with scheduling. Brian had started acting strangely too. He became strangely distracted. Sometimes we'd be having lunch together, and he'd stare at his phone like it owed him money. Other times, he'd leave barbecues early, always with some excuse. "Gotta get up early. Client meeting. Need to stop by the warehouse." One evening, we were grilling steaks in my backyard. Brian kept avoiding eye contact. Every time I looked at him, he'd suddenly become fascinated by the lawn. I actually joked about it. "What is it?" I laughed. "You secretly in love with my grass?" He forced a smile. "Nah, just tired." "Must be serious." "Why?" "You've burned 3 burgers already." Normally, Brian could grill blindfolded. That night, he nearly turned dinner into charcoal. Jessica laughed. Ashley rolled her eyes. Everyone moved on. So did I. He sometimes left work without explaining where he was going, and when we spoke, he rarely looked me in the eye. One afternoon, he vanished during lunch and returned almost 2 hours later. "Where were you?" I asked. "Meeting a client?" "Which one?" "The Henderson project." "The Hendersons postponed until Friday." He paused. Then he smiled. "Right. I meant Miller." "You met Miller without the paperwork?" It was informal. Brian had always been a terrible liar. Unfortunately, I had always been excellent at trusting him. I assumed he was stressed. Maybe he had made a mistake with the business. Maybe he had money problems. An affair with my wife wasn't even on the list. That changed during one of our traditional Saturday barbecues. Brian and Ashley came to our house for dinner. Our son was staying with a friend, so it was just the 4 of us. For most of the evening, everything seemed normal. Brian criticized the way I grilled the steaks. I reminded him that he had recently burned 3 burgers. "That was one incident," he said, "with 3 victims." Even Jessica laughed. For a few hours, Brian seemed like the same man I had trusted for almost 20 years. Around 10, he and Ashley left. Jessica went upstairs to shower while I cleaned the table. A few minutes later, I heard a phone vibrating near the living room chair. I reached between the cushions and pulled out a black phone. It wasn't Jessica's. It wasn't mine. And it wasn't the phone Brian normally carried. This was a second phone. I didn't unlock it. I didn't have to. The screen lit up with a new message. "Call me when you can." Beside the notification was a small profile picture. Jessica's face. Before I could fully understand what I was seeing, another message appeared. "Love you." I stared at the screen. My mind immediately started producing innocent explanations. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe the message had been sent to the wrong person. Maybe Jessica and Brian were secretly planning the most complicated surprise party in human history. Then the front door opened. Brian hurried inside. He saw the phone in my hand and stopped. His face lost all color. "I forgot something," he said. I held up the phone. "This?" He walked toward me and took it. His hand was shaking. I looked at him. "Why is my wife telling you she loves you?" Brian opened his mouth, but nothing came out at first. Then he finally gave me the most overworked sentence in the history of adultery. "It's not what you think." "What do I think?" "It's complicated." "Then make it simple." Jessica was upset. "We talked. That's all." "She tells you she loves you because you talked?" He glanced toward the stairs. That small movement told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't worried about hurting me. He was worried Jessica might hear us. The shower stopped upstairs. "Matthew?" Jessica called. "Who came in?" I kept looking at Brian. He looked terrified. I could have called her downstairs. I could have started shouting. I could have ended the marriage that night. Instead, I smiled. Brian forgot his phone. There was a pause. Then Jessica answered, "Oh." One word, but there was fear inside it. Brian lowered his voice. "Let me explain later." I stepped aside. "Go home. Matthew, now." He left. A minute later, Jessica came downstairs in her robe. "What did Brian forget?" she asked. "His phone. His regular phone?" I looked at her. She looked at me. Neither of us blinked. "I guess," I said. "Everything okay?" I smiled. "Of course." Her shoulders relaxed. That was the moment I knew the message wasn't innocent. But I also knew that confronting them now would only give them time to delete evidence and create matching lies. So I kissed Jessica on the forehead and went to bed. She fell asleep beside me. I stared at the ceiling for hours. I wanted to wake her up. I wanted to call Brian. I wanted answers immediately. Instead, I made a different decision. I would pretend I believed them. And while they were busy laughing at how easily they had fooled me, I was going to find out exactly what they had done. The next morning, I acted exactly the way they expected me to, like nothing had happened. I kissed Jessica goodbye before work. She smiled, a little too warmly, almost as if she were relieved. "See you tonight," she said. "Wouldn't miss it." At the office, Brian was already there. He looked exhausted. Probably hadn't slept much. Good. Neither had I. He watched me carefully all morning, clearly waiting for me to bring up the phone. I didn't. Instead, I asked him about invoices, payroll, and a problem with one of our job sites. By lunchtime, he had relaxed. He even cracked a joke. That told me everything. He thought he'd survived. Perfect. Because from that moment on, I stopped looking for explanations. I started collecting evidence. The first rule was simple. Never let them know you're suspicious. Cheaters become remarkably careful once they know they're being watched. So I smiled. I laughed. I thanked Jessica for dinner. I invited Brian over for coffee. Meanwhile, I quietly started putting pieces together. The first surprise came from our business credit card statements. Brian had charged several hotel stays over the past year. At first glance, everything looked legitimate. Business trips, client meetings. Except, I couldn't remember approving any of them. I checked our project calendar. On every one of those dates, there hadn't been a single meeting scheduled in those cities. Interesting. Very interesting. Then another coincidence appeared. Jessica's late meetings. I opened our family calendar. Jessica always entered her work schedule there. Out of habit, I compared the dates. Every single time Brian had supposedly traveled for business, Jessica had worked late. Once is coincidence. Twice is suspicious. 6 times? That's called a pattern. I exported every statement and saved copies to a private folder. Not because I already knew what had happened, because I had a feeling I'd need them later. A few days after that, luck handed me something even better. Our son asked if he could use the family tablet for homework. When he finished, he left it on the kitchen counter. Jessica had once logged into one of her messaging accounts on that tablet. She'd forgotten to log out. I wasn't planning to snoop. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Then a notification appeared. From Brian. My stomach tightened. I opened the conversation. Most of the recent messages had already been deleted. Apparently somebody had remembered to clean up. Just not well enough. A few older messages remained. Miss you already. Same hotel next Thursday? Matthew still thinks I'm working late. I read that last sentence 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it, because I wished I didn't. My hands were shaking. I wanted to throw the tablet across the room. Instead, I took screenshots. Then I emailed them to a brand new account I'd created the night before. After that, I deleted every trace that I'd opened the conversation. Jessica came home 20 minutes later. "Anything interesting happened today?" she asked. I smiled. The usual. For once, that wasn't a lie. Because my usual day had officially become gathering evidence against my own wife, and I had a feeling I was only getting started. Over the next 2 weeks, the picture became impossible to ignore. I didn't have to chase them. They were careless. They thought I still believed Brian's ridiculous explanation about "it's complicated." So they kept making the same mistakes. Every evening after Jessica fell asleep, I compared dates, business records, our family calendar, credit card statements. Every new document fit the previous one. Brian's business trips, Jessica's late meetings, the same days, the same cities, the same hotels. The affair hadn't started recently. It had been going on for almost a year. That realization hit harder than the messages. Almost a year. Almost 12 months of dinners together. Birthday parties, fishing trips, Christmas presents, all while they smiled across the same table. I wondered how many times Brian had shaken my hand after leaving a hotel room with my wife. Then I found something that made me physically sick. I checked my mother's medical calendar. Every appointment, every hospital visit, every day I had spent helping her. Nearly every one of those days matched another one of Jessica's late meetings. I just sat there staring at the dates. While I was helping my mother walk after surgery, they were together. While I was sitting beside her hospital bed, they were together. While I thought my wife was sacrificing her evenings because she understood family, she was sacrificing them for Brian. I closed the laptop, walked outside, and stood in my backyard for almost an hour. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I just felt empty, like someone had quietly removed every good memory from the last year. But the worst part was still waiting for me. One afternoon, my neighbor, Mr. Collins, stopped me while I was mowing the lawn. "Matthew," he said, "did you ever fix your security cameras?" "I don't have any." "Oh." He looked surprised. "I thought maybe you installed them after all those visitors." I turned off the mower. "What visitors?" He frowned. "You know, when your wife had company during the day." For a second, I forgot how to breathe. "What company?" "The tall guy." He shrugged. I assumed he was helping with renovations or something. My stomach dropped. "When was this?" "Oh, several times over the past year." He pointed toward his own house. "My driveway camera catches part of your front porch. I only noticed because the same truck kept showing up." Brian's truck. Of course. Mr. Collins looked uncomfortable. "I probably shouldn't have mentioned it." "No," I said quietly. "I'm glad you did." That evening, he sent me several video clips. Nothing explicit, just timestamps. Brian's truck pulling into my driveway. Brian walking to my front door. Jessica opening it before he even knocked. The door closing behind him. Then, hours later, Brian leaving. Usually 30 or 40 minutes before I came home from work. I watched every clip. Twice. I didn't need to see what happened inside the house. My imagination was already doing an excellent job. By then, there was no longer any doubt. Only one question remained. How much more was I about to discover? I thought I had already reached rock bottom. I was wrong. A few days later, I found out they hadn't just been sleeping together. They had been laughing at me. That discovery happened by pure accident. Jessica was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She had become much more careful over the past few weeks, but this time she'd forgotten it. A message appeared on the lock screen before it disappeared. It wasn't romantic. It was worse. "Brian, does he still believe we're just working late?" A second message arrived almost immediately. "Jessica, he believes anything. Matthew trusts us too much." I felt something inside me go cold. A few minutes later, another notification appeared. "Brian. Poor guy. Sometimes I actually feel bad for him." Jessica replied, "Only for 5 seconds. Then came the message I still remember word for word. He's the easiest person in the world to fool." I stared at the screen. That hurt more than every "love you" message. The affair was one thing. Mocking me together was another. I had trusted Brian with my family. I had trusted Jessica with my life. And somewhere between hotel rooms and fake meetings, the two of them had apparently decided I was the joke. I quietly took pictures of the notifications with my own phone. Then I put Jessica's phone back exactly where it had been. When she walked into the kitchen a few minutes later, She smiled. "Everything okay?" I smiled back. Never better. It was probably the biggest lie I'd ever told. That night I sat alone in my home office for hours. At first, I wanted revenge. Real revenge. The kind that ruins lives overnight. Then I forced myself to calm down. Getting angry would only help them. Thinking would help me. By sunrise, my decision was made. There would be no screaming, no broken furniture, no dramatic confrontation. They had spent almost a year planning their lies. I could spend a few more weeks planning the truth. And when everything finally came out, neither of them would have anywhere left to run. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney. Not because I still hoped the evidence would somehow become less painful, because I already had enough. Everything after this point was just making the case stronger. The attorney listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Do you want revenge?" he asked. "Or do you want to protect yourself? What's the difference? If you chase revenge, you'll make emotional decisions." He folded his hands. "If you protect yourself, revenge usually takes care of itself." That turned out to be the best advice I received through the entire divorce. Over the following days, I quietly started getting my life in order. I changed every important password: banking, email, cloud storage, business accounts, anything Jessica had ever known. Then I opened a separate personal account. Nothing illegal, nothing hidden. Just making sure my future paycheck wouldn't land in an account she could immediately access. I copied important financial records, insurance documents, property records, investment statements. Every document went onto an encrypted drive that stayed in my office safe. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had some control again. Control doesn't erase pain, but it gives you something to hold on to. Then another thought kept coming back. Ashley, Brian's wife. Every time I pictured her, I felt guilty. She had always been kind to me. She brought soup when I had the flu. She remembered my birthday every year. She visited my mother in the hospital, and all that time, she had absolutely no idea what her husband was doing. I wrestled with that decision for several days. Part of me wanted to stay out of it. Their marriage wasn't my responsibility. Then I asked myself one question. If our positions were reversed, would I want someone to tell me? The answer came immediately. Yes, even if it destroyed me. A comfortable lie is still a lie. Ashley deserved the truth, but not in a text message, not over the phone. News like that shouldn't arrive between grocery coupons and weather notifications, so I called her. "Hey, Matthew," she answered cheerfully. "Everything okay? Can we meet?" A short silence. "Sure. Is something wrong?" "Yes." Another pause. "Is Brian okay?" "He's fine." "What about Jessica?" "They're both fine." Her voice became anxious. "Matthew, you're scaring me." "I know." I took a deep breath. "I'll explain everything when we meet." "When?" "The sooner the better." She agreed without asking any more questions. As I ended the call, I realized something. For the first time since finding that second phone, I wasn't just carrying my own heartbreak. In a few hours, I was about to hand half of it to someone else. Ashley arrived almost 15 minutes early. That alone told me she was worried. She spotted me through the cafe window, smiled politely, then immediately frowned. I wasn't exactly hiding how little sleep I'd had. She walked over and sat down across from me. "Matthew, what's going on? You want some coffee first?" She shook her head. "No. You sounded strange on the phone." Ashley looked even more confused. "Why did you call me?" I looked at the folder lying between us. For the first time since discovering the affair, I hesitated. Destroying my own marriage was one thing. Destroying someone else's, even by telling the truth, felt different. Ashley noticed. "Matthew, you're scaring me." I slowly pushed the folder toward her. "I need you to look at these." She opened it without saying anything. The first page was a hotel receipt. She frowned. "I don't understand." "Keep going." The next page contained copies of Brian's business expense reports. The page after that showed the matching hotel reservations. Then screenshots of text messages. Ashley stopped. Her eyes froze on one message. "Miss you already. Same hotel next Thursday?" For several seconds she didn't move. She blinked once, then again. Finally she looked up at me. "No." I didn't answer. She looked back down. "There has to be some explanation." She grabbed another page. Jessica's work calendar, Brian's travel schedule, the dates highlighted in yellow, perfect matches. Another page, credit card statements, another hotel, another city, another matching date. Her breathing became noticeably faster. "No." She whispered it to herself more than to me. She flipped through the rest of the documents. Every page made her shoulders sink a little lower. Finally, she stopped reading. Her hands were shaking. She stared at the table for nearly a minute before speaking again. "Is this real?" "I wish it wasn't." She looked me straight in the eyes. "Have you confronted them?" "Not yet." Ashley covered her mouth with both hands. Tears immediately filled her eyes. "I don't..." Her voice broke. "I don't understand." Neither did I. Not at first. She wiped her face with a napkin. "How long?" "Almost a year." She actually laughed, not because anything was funny. It was the kind of laugh people make when reality becomes too absurd to process. "A year," she repeated it quietly. "A whole year." Then she looked somewhere past me, as if replaying the last 12 months in her head. "I defended him," she smiled bitterly. "My parents kept saying Brian had become distant. I told them he was just stressed." Another tear rolled down her cheek. "I kept making excuses for him." She took a deep breath. "And every time he came home late." "You believed him," I finished. She nodded. "I thought he was sacrificing time with me because he wanted to provide for our family." I looked down at the folder. "I thought Jessica was sacrificing time with me because she was helping her company." Ashley suddenly reached for her purse. "Wait," she pulled out her phone. "Give me a second." She opened her calendar and started scrolling through old months. Her fingers suddenly stopped. "Oh my God. What?" She turned the phone toward herself again. "No. Another date. Another. I remember these." She looked back at me. "Brian told me he was traveling for work." I nodded. "I know." She swallowed. "And Jessica." She opened her messages with Jessica. "Jessica always texted me the same thing." Ashley read one message aloud. "Matthew's mom isn't doing well. He's staying with her tonight, so I'm stuck working late too." She looked at another. "Another evening meeting. I swear I'm living at the office." Then another. "Work is killing me this week." Ashley slowly lowered the phone. They weren't even creative. I couldn't help letting out a bitter laugh. "No?" They were using the same story on both of us. She kept scrolling. Every few seconds, another date matched. Another business trip, another late meeting, another lie. Finally, she locked the phone and placed it on the table. "I have something too." She opened her banking app. "I always handled our household budget." She showed me several hotel charges Brian had explained away as business expenses. The names matched mine exactly. Same hotels, same weekends, same cities. Ashley shook her head. "I actually thanked him." "For what?" "For working so hard." She looked like she wanted to disappear. I used to tell him how proud I was. For a while, neither of us spoke. The waitress came over and quietly asked if we wanted anything. Ashley politely asked for water. I ordered black coffee. Neither of us touched either drink after they arrived. Ashley finally broke the silence. "So, what now?" "I don't want revenge." She looked surprised. "I just want the truth where they can't lie their way out of it." She slowly nodded. "They've lied long enough." I looked at the folder. Our families have dinner together every Sunday at Jessica's parents' house. Ashley immediately understood. A faint, determined expression appeared on her face for the first time since she'd arrived. In front of everyone. Yes. So they can't twist the story. Exactly. She took a long breath, then carefully closed the folder. When they walk into that house next Sunday, she looked me straight in the eyes. They'll think it's just another family dinner. I nodded. And it'll be the last one we'll ever have. Sunday finally arrived. Jessica spent the entire morning acting like everything was perfectly normal. She hummed while making breakfast, asked if I wanted coffee, even suggested we stop by the bakery before heading to her parents' house. I smiled. Sounds good. Watching her act like the perfect wife after everything I discovered was almost impressive. Across town, Brian was probably doing exactly the same thing with Ashley. Neither of them knew this would be the last normal day of their lives. Dinner started exactly as it always had. Jessica's parents welcomed everyone inside. Brian slapped me on the shoulder. "Good to see you, brother." I looked him in the eyes. "You too." Ashley quietly sat beside him. She didn't even look at me. We had agreed to pretend nothing had happened. Everyone laughed through dinner, talked about work, vacation plans, football. It almost felt like any other Sunday. Almost. As soon as dessert plates were cleared away, I stood up. "I need everyone's attention." The room fell silent. Jessica smiled nervously. "What is it?" I placed a thick folder in the middle of the table. "I've spent the last 3 weeks learning the truth about my marriage." Jessica's smile disappeared. Brian slowly lowered his glass. "I also learned the truth about my best friend." Nobody said a word. Jessica forced a small laugh. "Matthew, what are you talking about?" Instead of answering, I opened the folder. I slid the first hotel receipt across the table, then another, then copies of credit card statements, then screenshots of text messages. Every page told the same story. Jessica's face turned white. Brian leaned forward. "Matthew." I raised my hand. "No, you've both talked for almost a year. Now it's my turn." Jessica's father picked up one of the hotel receipts. Then another document. His expression hardened with every page. Her mother covered her mouth. Brian finally spoke. "It isn't what it looks like." Ashley laughed quietly. It was the saddest laugh I'd ever heard. "Seriously?" She pulled off her wedding ring and placed it in front of Brian. "You're still trying that?" Brian stared at her. "Ashley, please." She shook her head. "You lied to me for a year." Then she looked at Jessica. "And you looked me in the eye every Sunday." Jessica finally broke down. She started crying. "I'm sorry." I looked at her without saying anything. "It wasn't supposed to happen." "No," I replied calmly. "It was supposed to stay hidden." She lowered her head. Brian tried one last time. "We made a mistake." I couldn't help smiling. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. I looked around the table. This took planning, lies, hotel rooms, hundreds of messages. Almost a year. I closed the folder. "So don't insult everyone here by calling it a mistake." The room was completely silent. For the first time since I had found Brian's second phone, neither of them had a single lie left to tell. Nobody moved. Jessica kept crying. Brian stared at the table. Neither of them even tried to deny it anymore. Jessica's father was the first to speak. He slowly stood up and looked at his daughter. "Tell me he's wrong." Jessica couldn't. She just buried her face in her hands. That was all the answer anyone needed. Her mother began crying too. "I can't believe this." Brian finally looked at me. "I'm sorry. You're just sorry you got caught." He lowered his head. Ashley stood up. "I think we're done here." Brian reached for her arm. She stepped back immediately. "Don't touch me." She picked up her purse. "I wasted 10 years believing you were an honest man." Then she looked at me. "Thank you for telling me." I gave her a small nod. "You deserved the truth." She walked out without looking back. Brian started after her. The room fell silent again. Jessica slowly walked over to me. I know you hate me. I don't. She looked up. I don't hate you anymore. I just don't recognize you. Fresh tears rolled down her face. Can we please talk at home? There's nothing left to say. She grabbed my hand. I'll end everything. You should have done that a year ago. I'll do anything. I gently pulled my hand away. I know, that's the problem. You're willing to do anything now, just not when it mattered. I reached into my jacket and placed one final envelope on the table. Jessica frowned. What's that? Divorce papers. The room became silent once again. I signed them yesterday. You'll be hearing from my attorney this week. Jessica stared at the envelope as if it wasn't real. No, she whispered. You can't. I looked at her one last time. I already did. Without another word, I turned toward the front door. No one tried to stop me. As I stepped outside, I heard Jessica crying behind me. For months, I'd imagined how this day would feel. I thought I'd feel victorious, satisfied, maybe even happy. Instead, I just felt free. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Jessica didn't fight it. There wasn't much she could say after everything had come out. Brian's wife filed for divorce too. Ashley and I stayed in touch for a while, mostly because we were the only two people who truly understood what the other had been through. Eventually, life pulled us in different directions, but I never regretted telling her the truth. As for Brian, he lost more than his marriage. Our business partnership ended the same week I filed for divorce. Several longtime clients chose to stay with me after learning why we had split. I heard Brian eventually moved to another state to start over. Jessica tried contacting me for months. She wrote emails, left voicemails. I never answered. Some doors only need to close once. A year later, I heard through mutual friends that Jessica and Brian had tried dating openly after the divorces. It didn't last. Without lies, secrecy, and excitement, they quickly realized they didn't trust each other either. Funny how that works. As for me, I spent the next year rebuilding my life instead of looking backward. I traveled, spent more time with my mother, made new friends, and eventually I met someone who taught me something I thought I'd forgotten. Not everyone betrays your trust. Some people earn it. Looking back now, I don't see the day I exposed them as the day I lost my marriage. I see it as the day I finally got my life back. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.